I'm Abby.
And I'm Aly.
And we're the Rannick Twins. That's right, we said twins.
Identical, to be exact.
And this is Oops, I Arted. I'm Abby, and I am an art major. I'm a junior right now. I love learning about the wacky stories that come along with being an artist.
I'm Aly. I'm a business major with a focus on communication.
I love podcasts. This is an art podcast with a twist. We tell you the true stories of artists and how these stories influence their artwork.
For us, an artist can mean a lot of different things, right, Abby?
Absolutely. Art comes in many forms, like music,
Painting,
poetry,
sculpting, cooking.
those guys that carve stuff with chainsaws.
Yeah, those dudes are awesome. We should definitely do a podcast on that.
Totally. If there's a good story to tell, we'll tell it.
Exactly. This podcast isn't particularly about artwork. It's more about the weird things that happen in artists' lives. For example, today we're going to be talking about Gregg Allman from the Allman Brothers, and more specifically, the foot shooting party.
This is one of my favorite stories in musical history. I remember my dad telling us this story when we were very young. I thought it was a legend at first, and then I finally went to look it up and found out that Gregg Allman did indeed shoot himself in the foot.
Yeah, you know, growing up in the South, a lot of people think this is probably folklore, and I'm sure anyone who has listened to the Allman Brothers has heard of that. One of the Allman Brothers shot himself in the foot. Personally, I think this story is the reason the Allman Brothers became as big as they did, because without this whole occurrence, Gregg Allman could have been drafted. So I guess we should delve into the story before we give away too many details, shall we?
Yes, I'm interested. Also, this information was not incredibly easy to come by, at least reliable sources. I found a lot of forums about people talking about it when I was looking it up.
A lot of hearsay.
I found that you kind of had to wing it.
So luckily, I found some good articles. I got a lot of this information from Rolling Stones and a great article from The Garden and Gun called Gregg Allman's Restless Soul. It's a good read. And then, you know, all the fact-based stuff, I found a good old Wikipedia, my trusty pal.
All reliable.
Yes. All right, so Gregory Lenoir Allman. He was born December 8th, 1947 in Nashville, Tennessee.
Good old Nashville.
His brother Dwayne was born November 20th, 1946, making him just a year older.
Some close birthdays right there.
Yeah, you know. So they lived in Nashville for a short period, him, his brother, their dad, Willis Allman, and their mother, Geraldine. And then they moved to Norfolk, Virginia. Willis was looking for work. And the night after Christmas, Willis went to a bar, their dad. So Willis and his friend met a guy at the bar.
Okay.
And they started talking, they hung out, had some drinks, you know.
Yeah.
I guess that's how it works at bars.
Yeah.
And they were dropping him off at home when he pulled out a gun and was like, pull over.
This is a stick up.
And Willis, according to a couple of the articles I read, he tried to convince him not to, tried to talk him down, and the guy was like, you already know my name. So
what?
He shot him. Yeah.
Oh, he knew too much.
Yeah. So
dang.
Willis was murdered the night after Christmas.
That's horrible.
And Gregg and Dwayne were 2 and 3 years old at the time.
Geraldine.
Yeah, I know, poor Geraldine. She's alone with two boys.
Yeah.
That's that. So after that, Geraldine moved them to Nashville, and she sent Dwayne and Gregg to Castle Heights Military Academy, and Gregg began studying to become a dentist.
Okay.
So I think that's a pretty honest profession.
Yeah, that's a good thing to go into. People are always going to need their teeth fixed.
Exactly.
For as long as humans have teeth, we will need them fixed.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they were young teenagers at the time, and Gregg had
I'm sure wild.
Probably. Gregg had a job throwing papers, and he had finally scrounged up enough money from that job to buy himself a guitar. So Gregg started playing, but Dwayne, really picked up on the guitar. He just could play.
Sibling rivalry.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a little friendly competition.
No, I think it's healthy. It definitely helped these two out.
Absolutely.
So they were doing little shows with, the local musicians and stuff like that.
Support your local musicians.
Always. So they formed a band called the Almond Joys.
I love that name.
Yeah, I just want to pause for a second to appreciate Almond Joys.
I think it's so clever.
They took full advantage of that last name.
Absolutely. That is theirs to take, too.
So yeah, the Almond Joys played local venues across the South.
Yeah.
They were growing a bit of a following, and Dwayne started kind of pressuring Gregg, hey, drop out of school so we can start this band. Let's get this band going.
That's a tough decision.
I know. It's like a definitely a crossroads of a lifetime for sure. Like, do I quit school?
I feel like you just think that
Like
I
a
was
dentist.
crazy. You'd be like, no, are you crazy? I can't do that.
Maybe you should just do both for a little while. You know? I'm in school. I'm starting a podcast.
Well, he was doing both, right?
For a while, yeah. And then Dwayne was like, hey, man, drop out. Let's get this band
It's starting
going.
to get
Like, we
big.
got to take off. And then on top of all of this, Greg gets hit with a draft for the Vietnam War.
Uh-oh. So his being a dentist is put on hold.
Yeah.
Even if he wanted to stay in school at this point, he couldn't.
Yes, everything's on hold. It's
Yeah.
like, skirt! You got to go to the war now.
Yeah,
like, we're going.
We chose you.
Exactly. I'm sure you're wondering, like, Dwayne is older. How did he not get a draft notice? And it's because Willis had been murdered, well, while they were, like, Dwayne was 3. But Greg was 18 and fit to serve.
Send him off.
They had to find a way.
They're shipping him off.
Luckily, Dwayne had a plan.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I love that it was Dwayne's idea, too. This totally feels like something that you or I would come up with.
I'm sure he's been stewing on it for a while, you know,
When
the
you
draft.
think of it, he might have come up with it as like a joke. You know, they're talking about ways to get out, and he's like, dude, you could just like shoot yourself in the foot, you know? That's a great idea.
Yeah, so that's exactly what he said. I've been thinking about how we can get you out of the draft, and my best option is that you can shoot yourself in the foot. And I'm sure Greg was like, what? No way. I can't shoot myself in the foot. You can still play guitar. Exactly. You can still sing. You don't need your foot to do those things.
Yeah, dude, you can sit down on stage, huh? It's cool.
Yes, but shooting himself in the foot would in turn make him unfit to serve. He really didn't have a whole lot of options at this point. So they had a party, the infamous foot shooting party.
I love the name.
I know, right? Definitely piques your interest immediately. Can you imagine seeing that in a flyer, like, posted around your town?
A newspaper ad.
All right, the night before he was to report to the recruitment office, Dwayne invites all these girls over, and everyone's having a good time.
Gotta have a bunch of girls. You know, get you in the mood.
They're all getting drunk.
Shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I'm sure all these girls are like, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, aren't you?
Oh my gosh.
But
I hope not.
I feel like the general...
It was lighthearted.
Yes, it was very...
It's kind of a joke.
Yeah, it was like, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot later, and all the girls were probably like, you're so funny, Greg. And he had drawn, like, a target on his moccasin. But as the night grew later, this had become very real. I think the severity of the situation really started to set in with Greg.
That anticipation is building up throughout the night.
Yes, it's becoming more intense.
Yeah, you're like, well, there's not much time left.
Yeah, Greg kind of started chickening out a little bit. So Dwayne, you know, started kind of, like, egging him on, like, oh, you got to do this, you know, we have to have the band.
This would totally be us.
So Dwayne talked him into it. Greg downs 2 shots of whiskey, makes a quick phone call.
Heck yeah.
And then he comes out with a Saturday Night Special handgun.
A what?
I figured you were going to ask what a Saturday Night Special was, so I went ahead and looked it up. But it's a low-caliber, compact handgun.
All right, so a little pocket pistol.
Yeah, I'm sure it takes many names. But he walks outside with his handgun, and he did it. Shot himself in the foot.
I can't believe that he shot himself in the foot. Like,
yes.
I really feel like I would need you to shoot me in the foot. Or at least hold my hand. Because, you know, we do the 1, 2, you shoot on 2 instead of 3, and you told me you're going to shoot on 3, that kind of thing.
Yeah, out of love, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then, you know, sirens are growing in the distance. He shot himself in the foot. And
so he called the ambulance.
Yes, and I could not imagine the conversation that he had with the person on the other end of that line.
I really just wish that we knew, at least along the lines of what he said. I can imagine all day long, but I really just wonder.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a great night to be an operator.
I read that when he goes to the ER, he still has the shoe on, with the target painted on it.
Yes, I'm pretty sure he did still have his shoe on. Unfortunately, both the articles I read didn't have a whole lot of information on the aftermath. I'd love to hear that story, too, though.
That they get into the ER and they're like, dude, the target's still painted on your shoe. We have to ditch the shoe, you know?
But yeah, Greg Allman hobbled his way into the recruitment office the next day and got his medical exemption from the Vietnam draft. I just want to say, this plan worked. Also, fun fact, Greg Allman, according to him, painted the target strategically on his shoe so the bullets would shoot in between 2 bones. That way it would leave minimal damage to his foot.
It wouldn't shatter a whole lot.
Yeah, there are like 40 bones in your foot.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in those babies.
Yeah, definitely. So, the band went on to be a huge success. They formed the Allman Brothers in 1969, and 2 years later, they released Live at Fillmore East, which is a great album. Yeah, it actually hit number 13 on the Billboards. And then Dwayne died in a motorcycle accident October 29th of that year in Georgia.
That's horrible that happened to Dwayne, but I mean, Greg is...
I think Dwayne's death would have probably been a little bit harder.
Oh, yeah, because he knew him.
Yeah, and they were the Allman Brothers.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure Dwayne took the paternal roles in the family.
There's actually a quote from Greg Allman's memoir, My Cross to Bear, where he had said, "What we had been trying to do for all these years finally happened, and he was gone."
That's so sad.
I know, it broke my heart. Dwayne's the reason he shot himself in the foot.
And he was trying to talk him out of going to dentistry school, and it's so amazing to me that the Allman Brothers were only around for 3 years. I still listen to Live at the Fillmore East. It's so good.
It's a great album. So Greg Allman died May 27th of last year in Richmond Hill. So he was like in Savannah, and it was due to liver cancer, and he was 69 years old.
That is so sad. I mean, at least he was back in his home.
Mm-hmm. And legendary.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah, the Allman Brothers, I don't think the band would have been as big as they were if Greg Allman had been drafted.
Oh, yeah, and, you know, there's no telling how long he could have been drafted for.
Or if he would have even survived.
Yeah, and what if Dwayne passed away while he was at war, too? You have to think about that, because that would have been maybe even more devastating, because he wouldn't have seen him for such a long time.
I agree. But yeah, that's the foot shooting party. What do you think?
The story is even better now that I know a lot more details about it. Yeah, I've read a lot of stuff, but I think that we covered it pretty well from start to finish.
I agree. Next week, we will have a new story about a new artist.
It's going to be a theory series.
Oh, yeah, we're going to change it up.
The Eerie's.
That's a nice
teaser.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys.